Time for focus. And a day before the UK votes on whether or not to stay in the EU, we have a report from Scotland. Party leaders there support the Remain camp, and polls suggest most Scots will vote to stay in the EU. But if the overall result goes the other way, that could trigger a second independence referendum. From Glasgow, Hervé Amoric and Steve O'Reilly report.
In the suburbs of Glasgow, senior Scottish nationalists are rallying the youth vote. They want the UK to remain in the EU.
The biggest thing that we can do to step shift Scotland's relationship with the EU is independence. And that's what we're after.
Many here are concerned that the referendum campaign has descended into acrimony in neighbouring England over immigration.
Can we do something to stop these lies? They are frightening people.
I would be scared if we left the EU, what would happen to certain rights that we have presently.
The rising star of Scottish nationalism reminds young voters that their future is at stake in this vote.
Over 300,000 jobs created by EU firms and EU trade. That's hugely important to Scotland, but it's more than that. You know, if Scotland was forced to leave the European Union by the rest of the United Kingdom, it would be a disastrous, democratically indefensible position.
The message is clear. If Britain votes out, but Scotland votes in, the SNP, which controls the Scottish Parliament, will call for another referendum on Scottish independence.
If UK votes for Brexit, that's as big a win as the UK voting to remain, because it raises the issue of independence. But it's a very, very dangerous game to play.
So let me tell you that I love you and think about you all the time.
Caledonia, something of an anthem for a country at a crossroads. Socialist politician Jim Sillars, a former trade unionist, campaigned to leave the EEC in 1975. 4 decades later, he is a rare voice in the SNP, defying the party's official position of Remain.
If the United Kingdom comes out of the European Union, it is then much easier for us to get independence, because that European dimension, which came on the side of better together, the opposition to independence, by creating uncertainty, that is removed, because we will have no connection with the European Union in institutional terms.
Jim Sillars is taking part in a referendum debate organised by the Anti-Poverty Alliance. His ally is an ex-Labour minister who defies both the Prime Ministers he served under, 2 other Scots, Brown and Blair.
The idea that the EU is being generous to Scotland is a myth. The money that it gives us is our money in the first place.
On the other side of the debate, a young social entrepreneur.
I think Scotland has a really unique case, even within the UK, to remain part of the EU. We've seen billions of pounds come in research and social funding to support some of our poorest communities, particularly when the right-wing Conservative governments in Westminster are forcing through a package of austerity. That doesn't taste well in a Scottish mouth. We're punching above our weight in the world. We're leaders in research and science, and these are things that are critical to the European Union.
At the University of Glasgow is a worldwide authority in geothermal energy and fossil fuel. Paul Younger heads a team of 15 scientists, partly funded by a €25 billion grant from Europe.
If we lost the EU funding, this would be nothing short of a disaster for our area of research. It goes far beyond the money. It's the value of the collaboration and being part of a community of researchers right across Europe.
This major network of businesses was created 2 years ago to support the bid for Scottish independence.
82% of our members want us to stay in the EU. And basically the reason for that is that Scotland exports more to the EU per head than any other part of the UK. We have a great deal of whisky and a great deal of food and drink. Fish in particular, high quality fish, goes to France, and we don't want to put any barriers in the way of those exports.
In this trendy barber shop in the centre of Glasgow, clients and staff are making up their minds on the EU referendum.
I would be more leaning towards staying in the EU.
Scotland is better in Europe, and I do think the UK is better in Europe.
But the conversation moved very quickly onto another type of referendum, on Scottish independence.
If I knew for a fact that we would get another referendum quicker, I would vote to leave.
Scotland is a nation. It never stopped being a nation when it joined with England in 1707 in a union. in a political union. It votes differently, and it thinks and talks differently, and it even partly talks to itself rather than to the rest of the United Kingdom.
Scotland seems more comfortable in the EU than neighbouring England, but the question of independence remains to be settled.